It's not wild, it's wild. Oh.
Wildy.
Alright, we're going to get the pictures cleaned up in a second.
Stupid way to
Can't see
spell.
anybody.
It's fantasy. Add letters.
So, apologize for that. We're professionals here.
Huh?
You guys are ready for Honey Heist, by the way?
Really looking forward to this, and I'm going to stick by my Victorian pig face lady.
It's so upsetting.
You're gonna have to read I hope we'll accommodate this.
I'll make it accommodate somehow. I will realize I have not done so yet. I pretty you have a few stats, criminal and good. Like if you buy this.
I'm sold on that.
Yeah. I'm criminal and fair.
You're watching, so to the one other person watching, I apologize. Unless it's one of you guys, then forget about it.
It's probably me.
It might be me also.
So okay. You know what AO3 is, right?
AO3.
Archive of our own.
Oh, okay, yes. I don't go there though.
Okay, but you know what it is.
Yes.
There's Teddy Robbins fanfic on AO3.
Nope.
My life is better without that information. So much better.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Where are we getting feedback from?
Oh, I hope it's not me.
It's on your end, probably.
Me? Am I echoing?
I don't hear it.
I don't have anybody echoing.
I'm not hearing it either, so.
I'm
Oh,
echoing.
do you mind?
I got you, everybody. Echoing is gone. Somebody else talk.
Hello.
You're echoing.
Do we do multiple sources? Because I don't hear an echo from Sarah's feed.
The only thing I do is put her headset.
Do you want me to share my screen?
Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that.
I just noticed that my icon's not yet up on chat, and maybe I can do the live drawing thing again.
Yeah, no,
That's always entertaining.
setup from 2 weeks ago got erased, and I had to build it all from scratch.
Oh shit.
Oh, Bluetooth. Am I still echoing?
But it was like everybody was echoing.
Okay, but it's literally about just type you guys into my headset, so if I start to echo again. Can't help you. Oh my god, Mom, how is my microphone covered in your hair? Well, first you have a dog.
Okay, where'd everybody go?
What?
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, everybody's
No, Bill!
everybody disappeared. What happened?
Can you hear us?
I can hear
No,
you.
I'm talking about in YouTube.
The video. We got nothing but we got the best content right here. Is what we got.
Everybody's so on my headset. No, everybody's loud. Please.
What's with you right now? Why are you so needy? Is it not
Nobody yell or I'm going to go deaf. Oh, dude, that hurt. Nope. Really?
What is wrong with my headset? It's so loud.
And just have Sarah talk about her trip.
It wasn't that exciting, you guys. I was on a train for like 2 weeks. It was a thing.
That sounds pretty cool.
It was fun, but I mean, it's a train. Coming home.
And you
was
went to
interesting.
another country.
I did. I'm from that other country.
What other country?
Texas.
That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that. That's oh god, I hate when they do that.
From what little I have read up on it and been trying to keep track on it, but
All right.
the whole
I'm going to need to
from
shut everything
what
down.
little
on
I
my end.
have read up on it and been trying to keep
Okay.
track on it, but
All right.
the whole
I'm going to need to
from
shut everything.
Wait, so Eminem did a song called Godzilla? At least that one has like.
Welcome
Godzilla.
back. I think we should be on the internet again.
Hey, I
Everything
see
went
me.
fine. Hello, internet.
Mako, shh. I'm sharing my screen.
Are you?
I am.
You're sharing it with us, and that's it.
Why isn't it showing up on the thing?
It
It's
is.
not.
What?
Oh,
Wait,
no, the internet is just like super behind.
that might be good.
So quit. Pause your Netflix. Quit. Pause the torrent for now. It's time for Still Digging. Let us do our bit. Then you can get back to your lives. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait for us to be pre-recorded. So there, that'll teach you.
Shh. Shh. Quiet.
All right.
Does that help?
Well, they're quiet now, so I think we can start. They've learned their lessons on the internet. So, we're back. Welcome to Still Digging. We are the show where a panel, a group, a cluster, a...
Ooh, topical.
I'm trying to think of any good ones. A trial of archaeologists discuss the world of archaeology, presented by the Archeo-RPG Collective. I'm your host, Bill, and today our panel includes Amma, Tom, and the returning guest, Sarah, back from that foreign land to the south, Texas.
Oh, it's more like the West, but yeah.
The southwest. So today, we are back.
There's not a damn person in Texas that talks like that.
Hail the rich play.
Well, Dale and Tar Maces. To all our Texas fans.
You don't want to piss off the great country of Texas, my friend.
It's not a country. Commonwealth.
Lone
Let's have this
Star-
conversation.
Stallone stars.
Someone's gonna be very, very mad at me now. I'm gonna get don't at me.
Stars at night. I don't know if the song's copyright, so I won't sing anymore. All right. So today,
Oh no.
we are back at the confluence of role-playing games, popular culture, and archaeology. First up, we're going to continue our talk from last time about Critical Role and the book, The Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. The book has now been released. We've had a chance to read over some of it, and we'll give you some of our impressions, especially with regard to some of the archaeology within that, or at least the history and artifacts within the book.
It was good.
So there we go. That's pretty much the entire segment right there. It was good.
Woo! Wildemount.
So this week we have the finale of Steven Universe. We have the episode that dropped last night. I hope somebody watched it, but we're going to talk about it. Because Steven Universe offers a Stallone voice of Amma from the side. I really need to get like the digital things someplace so we can see when the voice modulates, so everybody knows it's Amma talking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's my video.
I still don't see your screen share showing up. I don't know if anybody else is.
You'd have to like.
I don't see it
your
in
camera.
YouTube either.
Yeah, it's not showing up in YouTube, so I don't know what that means.
Nobody knows.
Well, we'll just describe what Alma draws to you.
Well, hail.
Oh no, that one might be copyrighted.
Oh, we need to get into that sometime soon. That's got some good lore too.
Hail.
Oh god, that's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. All right.
So we're going to talk about Steven Universe. They have some interesting architecture as well as some of the storyline information on there, which taps onto the world of sort of material culture and the like. So we'll talk a little bit about that as it comes through. And then finally...
And Ancient Aliens.
Spoilers! And then finally... we're going to talk about a tiny little video game. It's like an indie game that came out last Friday. Apparently it sold like maybe 1 or 2 copies or something. Of course, we're talking about Doom Eternal. Oh, no. I've been corrected on that. With Doom later. Doom is later. Apparently this time we're talking about Animal Crossing, which does it involve the slaughtering of rampant slaughtering of animals?
With your vehicle.
Yeah, it's different than Train Crossing.
Oh, then I was watching something else entirely. So hopefully I'll get educated when we get talking about that segment. I was playing a different game.
Yeah.
So don't forget.
No, not Ice Tracker.
It's a much darker. Could we do a Doom Animal Crossing crossover?
Have you seen the Jacksepticeye link that I put in chat? That one was pretty good.
The one about no good games are coming out this month and they're like shooting him.
Yeah, that one. I like that one.
This one is all like his take on Animal Crossing. It's the first time he's ever played. I know we're getting too deep before we even started, but it's really good. You guys should give it a watch.
We'll get back to that in a second, but first, let's dive in. Because it's time for us to talk about a little bit of Critical Role Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. Stay to our cartoon we don't have, with a song sung by the cast.
Us?
Yes. All right.
I don't know. I can sing Godzilla again.
So the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount's out. So for those who are not familiar, this is a guidebook to the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. So first and foremost, this is a Dungeons and Dragons thing. Secondly, specifically, this takes place in the world of Exandria, which is the world in which the web show Critical Role takes place in, both season 1 and season 2. This is getting way too deep.
Things I did not know.
Mm-hmm.
And hold on. Season 1 had its own campaign book, a book guide to Tal'Dorei, but it was not officially published by dating myself there, TSR, Wizards of the Coast. But now, for campaign 2 of this series, takes place on the continent of Wildemount, and there is now a new guide specifically for that goes along with the adventures of the players. I don't have the actual book. I have it on D&D Beyond, so that's the best you're going to get for me holding it up.
I was going to say, if you could screen share with me, I can...
Plus,
That's awesome.
It's like copywritten, so I don't want to do that either. But
this is an educational program.
True.
Is it?
As long we try to be. I try to be.
But anyway.
Although.
So what makes this, as if you watched last episode last time, and you better have, everything's in order. We have an ongoing lore. If you aren't caught up with our lore, you're going to be lost every episode. It's kind of like X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's what we need to do. We need to structure this like X-Files. It would be way more fun.
Yes. Where we make up the lore afterwards, then try to make it all match up at later. It was all tied together the whole time.
On purpose.
So in this current season, there's a war going on between two nations, the Dendwaldi Empire and the Kreen Dynasty. Of interest for us, besides watching the show, okay, 3 of us who watched the show, is that at least twice during the course of this season, there have been mentions of archaeological excavations and of ruins of past civilizations and artifacts being recovered. Also, these 2 warring powers are using artifacts for nationalistic purposes to sort of aid in the propaganda and some cases weapons building of the war effort. So that's where we were last time. So digging into it a little deeper. Does anybody have any questions after all that from last time?
No. I'm gonna try
I never watched the show.
Okay, well, let me go in
Yes.
right to what makes this sort of interesting. So, Matthew Mercer, the dungeon master of Critical Role and pretty much the brains behind this entire Exandria universe, took a lot of effort to world build, to create a lived world. There's an entire prehistory that he puts into his world, which has the effect upon the world now. So it's the sort of the myth of Exandria. We have the times of the foundings where you have the creator gods, and the creator gods are working with their creatures, and there's arcana, and so the gods are working with their mortal creatures, and it's an age of magic and alchemy and so forth is going on. And there's a grand city called Vasselheim, which still exists in the world today. You look like you had a question?
I do have a question. So you use the term prehistory, which is not, I don't think, incorrect here, but is it, so there was the Age of Arcanum, which is the pre-Calamity stuff.
Right.
Am I frozen?
I was trying to use it in words that someone, because if I just immediately came out with pre-Calamity,
right?
No one's
and then
right,
and then Calamity was the transition period, and now we're post-Calamity.
Yes.
Okay.
Or the modern.
That's actually, if I could jump in there, I think that's a really interesting point if we want to muse on it, is the fact that if you look at a lot of high fantasy, a lot of it based on like Tolkien Tolkien's writings, there is no prehistory. It's all like very much documented from kind of like an age of the gods through to like the age of men, counting with the age of elves as well too. But that's something really interesting that I think is kind of unique to fantasy in a way, is the fact that there is no period like that, and what kind of implications does that have?
Well, to be counter, if you look at a lot of indigenous lore, because this is apparently the drum I get to beat, they also don't have prehistory. They have their oral history starts at the beginning and goes until modern day. So it's not something that we don't see in the real world. I mean, we're the ones that decided what's prehistory and what's not prehistory. So.
No, and I'm not necessarily building that as a counter. I'm just pointing that out as something that's kind of implicit in Western fantasies that are built off of kind of a Tolkien mythos.
Oh yeah.
Is this time before time kind of thing?
Yeah, it all relates back to, but and that's not just. I don't think it's just necessarily. With just the indigenous in Japanese mythology as well too, time has this this kind of almost not non-linear, but it goes horizontally to vertically in a way. So you've got the age of the gods, and then that kind of transcends into the age of man, and that's how the timeline is kind of perceived. So I think it's interesting that fantasy builds off of these kind of mechanics, I guess.
Now, another interesting thing here, and this will probably get more into Sarah's wheelhouse, is that this myth plays around with the idea of a golden age, a grand tragedy. The golden age is lost, and now we're living in an age where we're trying to uncover these sort of lost technologies, these lost worlds. These were gods who once walked upon the earth, and they're now locked behind the celestial door. At this point.
So, did the gods come from deep space?
No.
Will they only awaken if the stars align correctly?
There is interdimensional travel involved with some of these gods. They are extraplanar. They are extraplanar beings.
There are technically great old ones.
Did they have civilizations that were swallowed up by either the desert or the ocean in a great catastrophe?
Probably.
Weren't there two floating cities that fell to the earth? There were two cities in the sky which are fallen.
Fair.
So that's kind of
okay. So it's really interesting to see that even in a modern day fantasy world setting, that there are still very strong elements of theosophy and Lovecraft being interwoven into the storylines. So that's always interesting to me to see how far that reach goes.
I think the Lovecraft is more from Dungeons and Dragons in general. Dungeons and Dragons is pretty much the mix. If Tolkien and Lovecraft had a love child, it's Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, the Lovecraftian elements in D&D didn't come until later on.
They were there originally. They were there originally. Then there was the lawsuit, and then some of them got renamed.
That's right. How do you lawsuit? How do you? Anyway.
I think you can if we're gonna take apart D&D as an artifact, which is part of what we're trying to do here, right?
Yeah.
We have to look at where the sources of these artifacts, products, whatever you want to call them, are from, and the fact that there's a lot of crossover between. I know we were having a conversation pre-stream about fandoms, but there's definitely a lot of crossover between the D&D fandom and Lovecraftian fandom. And on stream for Critical Role, they've actually made a point a couple of times they've played Call of Cthulhu that Lovecraft is a very problematic figure, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I have written the only defense I will ever write for Dear H.P. Lovecraft, and yes, he had what we would view today as incredibly problematic opinions about everything. But he was also a man of his time. So it's not like he was existing inside a vacuum. I mean, that's my thing right there, is like everybody wants to get all uppity about it. And it's like, you're not really pissed off at Lovecraft. You're pissed off at Lovecraft's time. Like,
yes,
everybody.
At first I was going to go with like he was super racist first time, but I'm working on something
Really?
right now. I'm working on something right now. So I've recently watched The Birth of a Nation, and I'm reading the book based on the Klansman, the 1915.
Okay.
Original.
These are contemporary American. You got to remember, the 1920s is the high point of the Ku Klux Klan in the United States.
Yeah.
When they're a major political power.
Not the Nat Turner reboot.
No, not the Nat Turner reboot. This was the high mark of racism, of overt racism in the United States.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that Lovecraft is a good person. I'm just saying that everybody wants to dogpile on Lovecraft like he's an anomaly, and he's not. A lot of the writing that came out of that time period is incredibly problematic, but it gets a pass that Lovecraft doesn't usually get because of the far reach that Lovecraft has. And I think we should be critical about, the not really, like the in-your-face racism that Lovecraft was using to write. But I think we should also keep in mind that the reason Lovecraft was able to use racism as an element of his horror was because the idea of race, of mixing races, was a horrific idea during that time period. And so it was easy to use that as a way to create a horror situation, because all of the fancy dancy white people were afraid of it. And that's, I think, what people miss when they're like, oh yeah, Lovecraft, he was such a problematic person. We're not even going to talk about Lovecraft's cat because, but my point,
the 1923 Virginia Racial Integrity Act that didn't get overturned until 1967. And,
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You can't take it out of context. Taking it in context lets you realize how far we've clawed our way out.
Yeah.
But I think it's also. But I think it's the same token.
Pull it back.
Hang on, let Thomas talk.
Yeah. What's Thomas going to say?
I was just going to say one, like this was more of my comment had to do with looking forward. It's the idea that the commentary is there and critical in other areas because they still want to play the game. They want to build on the mythos. You have creators that are now diverse, and while they are and when you encounter his content, you have to deal with that. But people build and move forward with that. I think that's what's really important is that we can acknowledge where Lovecraft's position, what he said, and say it's wrong, and then say what can we take from this and build and move forward and build better games. And that's really what I think is important about critical role approaching that, saying that, and moving forward with Call of Cthulhu.
I like that forward momentum.
And
Take.
To pull it further back to Critical Role and to the book. No, because
we should go back. Talk about
it. They take further efforts here, and they even, I would say, Matt Mercer has even taken further efforts here to rehabilitate one of the most problematic archetypes within the world of D&D. We previously, one of our first episodes of Still Digging, we discussed the problems of the orc in Dungeons and Dragons. In his world of Wildemount, in this gaming world of Exandria, the orc and the half-orc are given agency, are allowed to be creatures which can either be... Well, this goes with sort of a lot of these quote-unquote dark characters, evil characters that you'll find.
You could say the same thing as the Kryn dynasty as well, too, with the...
With the drows and the...
Yeah.
And the Jewars.
The bugbears and...
Okay. I'm sorry, I have to step on this. I think it's cool that they're doing that. I really am. But as someone who's very immersed in fantasy, the fantasy genre, this isn't unusual. I mean, this is actually something that people have been working on for a very long time, taking the evil, marginalized, underwritten races and playing the what if game. And we've gotten some spectacular fiction out of that. And you can actually see D&D itself responding to it. So, I mean, I guess I'm like, it's cool that Critical Role's doing it. And I guess it's cool that Critical Role has made playing D&D cool again, I guess. But can we not act like they're the only people that ever invented sliced bread?
No. What this is, though, is that this is sort of your classic problem of, but they are the ones popularizing this. They are the ones that are.
I understand they're the ones popularizing it, but as someone who works in history, I think it's important that we don't sit here and act like they're the only ones that have ever done anything about this, because then it makes it sound like everyone else who has ever played D&D, that we're all just a bunch of like homophobic, racist trolls who just sit here and play our little game and don't want anybody else coming into our world because it'll mess our shit up. And it's just like, no, we've been doing this for a while, guys. But
this is in an official. This wasn't in the official player's handbook when 5e came out. This wasn't how the monster manual for 5e came out.
No, you have to go outside of 5. You have to go outside of the original D&D to see this shit, but it's been being published.
My point here is that this is part of the now it is part of the official D&D canon. This is an official D&D published book, and rightfully and wrongfully with a lot of these things, when it becomes under the guise of the official thing, it will get more attention, even though it may have on the outside of it been that way for years or decades.
No, and I'm really glad that this kind of stuff is becoming part of the official canon, but like now I feel like this urge to go and dig up all of these other like small campaigns that have already done this and be like, look, I swear, look at these people who like paved this road for you.
Maybe you should. Honestly, I mean, give them more credit for it.
One of the first thing comes to mind is the Asians Represent podcast that has their own campaign where they're working on, Asian representation in gaming. So I mean, it's just that it's smaller and it needs that bigger platform to. I mean, they're on One Shot Network, which is pretty fantastic.
And all you have to do is go back to 2nd edition Oriental Adventures to know why it's such a problem. But no, if you go to Dungeon Masters Guild, you're going to see a ton of small modules by small creators, which are covering all these things and more. It just takes the behemoth a long time to get on board.
Yeah, and I think the thing that Critical Role actually did was that they created enough of a fan base to create that movement in the mainstream.